Thank you so much for joining us today. Before we kick this off, I do want to point out to the audience that we welcome questions. Please post any questions that you have in the Q&A section at the bottom of your screen. Type them in, and then we'll address those at the conclusion of today's discussion. So I'd now like to turn this over to Harvey Briggs, Forrest Family Office's Chief Communications Officer. Harvey, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you, Callie. And thank you, everyone, for taking the time to be with us today. I know everyone is busy, and the fact that you can spare some time for us on this call, it really means a lot. So we appreciate that. I'm excited today because we're here to talk about one of the most pressing topics in business today. It seems like AI is everywhere these days, but the industry is actually in its infancy. I just read that it was valued at more than $233 billion in 2024, but it's expected to grow to $1.7 trillion by 2032. Now, most businesses that will need to adopt AI don't have either the expertise nor the manpower in-house, and will be looking elsewhere to get it done. Understanding more about this industry is one of the reasons I'm looking forward to this conversation today with Anup Bhatia. He's the founder and CEO of Nowigence. Anup, it's great to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Harvey. A pleasure to be here.
Can we start out this conversation with you telling us about yourself and your background, just to bring people up to speed?
So I was born in India. I studied also, my early education is from India. I did my engineering in one of the reputed engineering college in India, and then moved to Scotland to do my management. I failed in marketing, so I had to do that repeatedly. But in any case, I finished my MBA, and then I joined AkzoNobel, which is a Dutch company. And I went back to India, and subsequently I was picked up by General Electric to start a few of their businesses in India at the time when India was just opening out its capital markets to attract foreign investment. So I was instrumental in starting the first ever wholly owned subsidiary for any conglomerate, and it happened to be for GE in India, and was moved, I think, in early 90s to Europe, where I was a part of the globalization team. Globalization was a new term then, and it was difficult because there was no internet and information was needed desperately to kind of grow the businesses. GE at that time when I started was only 8% of its revenue was from Europe, 2% from Asia, predominantly a US company. And by 2001, I think we had achieved the mandate of being kind of equal strength in all the three poles that we ran the business in. And then I was with them till about the mid of the 2010s, and around 2018 started investing in the field of AI, so was one of the earlier investors. And that is how Nowigence got formed, and Nowigence is nothing but now intelligence. That's the way the term got coined.
Oh, great. So tell us a little bit about the founding of the company and the intersection of your history and your involvement with AI now.
So, great question, Harvey. When you look back into the early days of the internet, there was no information. So there was a huge need for kind of digitizing whatever had been published till then, and to be able to research out or search out the content so that you could use information to grow businesses. So that's how I think internet got born. But then again came other companies like the social media. The explosion of information it kind of accelerated somewhere around 2007, 2008. If you remember, Instagram got created just because they could beautify photographs, and that was around 2012. So you can see how recent the history of the explosion of information is through social media. But then that brought also problems about validity of information, how to absorb all that information. And with that explosion, I think we are getting a little dumber just because we just can't access the information that's available. So that's the need. That's the time when you look at AI and you say you need AI for not only the breadth of knowledge, but also the depth of knowledge. And you need it within organizations, you need it within individuals, and you need it in the economy sector at large in order to kind of get the insights that you need in order to grow. So that's how Nowigence got born. And Nowigence also indexes ideas. So from that perspective, when you look at what is indexing ideas, it is about reading documents, uh, extracting out what we think is a valuable idea, and then making sure that we don't deduplicate that idea in a repository of information. And ultimately, it's ideas which leads to those are the ones which lead to concepts, and those are the ones which basically, with a group of people, result into a business.
Right. So talk about the businesses that could really benefit from this type of information management, I guess I'd call it, for lack of a better term. But what are the types of businesses that you're working with, and how are they benefiting from what you're doing?
I think there are two questions over here. So Javi, I'll first go to the generic answer and then come into how specifically we are working on the product side to implement AI. So I think overall, there is a need to get the depth and the breadth of the knowledge that you're seeking. Gone are the days when you could come into a meeting room and be very generic and kind of express your opinions, which may or may not matter to achieve the business goals. Now things are getting more and more focused. AI is coming in a big way. We know it from the search engine itself that anything you query, the search comes to you in a more intelligent form than it did before ChatGPT got launched. So, things are changing. And I think that on a generic level puts specificity into the use of AI into virtually every product of the company. So when we look at Nowigence historically, it was focused on the research of information. But I think there is a Nowigence yesterday, and there's a Nowigence which is going to be there in the next, let's say, a month. The Nowigence yesterday was more towards gathering insight from information. The Nowigence tomorrow, we've just recently, just a couple of days ago, we've signed a letter of intent, which gets the promoters now are in 4 sectors. They're in the field of AI, they're in the field of fintech, they're in the field of energy, clean energy, use of even hydrogen or production of hydrogen in small utility items which can supply to buildings. And the last thing that they are also one of the largest provider of the last mile logistics. And they're coming up with, when you look at the fintech side, they're soon going to be launching satellites in order to make the payment portal accomplish all the arbitrage and all the transactions within 5 minutes from whichever country that they exist in. And then you look at, how can AI help them? And then AI helps them in order to kind of improve their arbitrage. A few decimal points of foreign exchange benefit leads to a very large volume of money that they save. And it's the same thing when you look at logistics, it's productivity. As far as I know, and I'm an engineer, as far as I know, I haven't seen a technology which delivers as much productivity as AI does. So that's the second part of your answer, just giving you very specific examples of how we are going to be using AI. But then you also look at, whenever there has been a massive increase in the utility of any product, and I'm going to kind of relate to calculators. At one time, businesses could not manage without calculators. And yes, we were great. We were brilliant minds in the 50s and the 60s. We all had mental capabilities to do math. Many of us, could do very complex math within seconds. But then the use of calculator only allowed the business to expand. And this is the time in our history where AI is going to be the fuel for growth. People are decreasing, birth rates are decreasing. As we optimize, we need the productivity from AI. So that is where the history of the company is. It's kind of positioning itself for growth. It's positioning itself into the product of 4 different sectors where AI would be absorbed, and it is creating its own product, which is using extractive AI to index ideas.
So when you looked at this opportunity and saw it coming, why did you really decide to tackle this opportunity? What drove you to this space?
Very good question, Javi. So, I think I would push back a little bit and say, what was the interest for Jeff Bezos to start Amazon? Or, why would Salesforce start? Everything was at its very beginning of that emerging technology of cloud computing. Or why did Facebook had to go in, social media and then become one of the largest digital marketing company? So you look at it and you say, yes, there is a huge risk. In an emerging technology, whether you look at Amazon, whether you look at Salesforce, you look at Facebook, or you look at Google itself, it takes a certain amount of time before you get profitable and you grow into a giant. And that's the risk with every emerging technology. There is going to be a hype cycle. We saw it at the dot-com boom also, boom or bust. And we are seeing it now with the AI also. So there is a risk involved, but the opportunity, if you do have the intent and the tenacity to kind of go through the roughness of the water of the emerging technology, then you will survive and you will sustain and you will thrive.
Yeah. And it's interesting because there are some very big players in this space now, right? Obviously, OpenAI came in early, but you've got Google, you've got Apple, you've got other people playing in this space. So how do you penetrate this market with that type of competition?
Harvey, long time I heard an interview of Sam Altman, and he said uh, very, very confidently that companies which are with an investment of $5 to $10 million would find it relatively rough to survive. So I think your thought is coming from that same angle. But when I look at DeepSeek, for instance, claims that they came out with $6 million and, are becoming competitive to some of the larger players. So at this moment, when you look at the amount of infrastructure investments being put in from the Magnificent Seven, the Mag 7 as we call them, it's huge and it's in billions of dollars. So how do we basically survive? But I think in our case also, at least with the new promoters, we've got tens and hundreds of millions of dollars in revenues for products which are actually serving and are of great utility. And now with AI, part of it is already developed at their end. Part of it is what's the value that they are seeing in Nowigence by bringing it all together. I think that speed and the ability that the aspect that we already own some of the marketing channels helps us to push our AI into the market more aggressively. And, again, in an emerging economy, nobody knows who's going to thrive, who's going to survive. It's always, one day at a time. But I think the decisions that we are taking are making it look as if we are going to be very growth focused very soon.
Great. That's a good question, I guess. Then how will you thrive? What are the aspects of your business that will really help lead you to a leadership position as you move forward?
And the way I look at it is that there are certain existing streams of businesses that we need. And every stream of business, no matter how they exist, if they don't think about the AI, the productivity in the future, they are going to get marginalized. So if we are operating in the 4 sectors that I talked about, naturally every product over there needs AI, and we've got the expertise as a team together to develop the tools that are going to offer productivity, growth, or even new innovations to kind of establish the growth path. To give you an idea, this new promoters, I mean, first if I look at their history, they were amongst the largest telecom value-added service providers. They have served companies like Verizon, AT&T, and that trajectory of the business was from 2004 to now. When I look at some of the innovative ideas that they're already having a couple of drone taxis, which can, where you just have to feed your destination and the drone taxis flies two people to their destination. Now, naturally, there's a logistic companies also associated with them in the last 1 mile logistics where they have to deliver on time and productivity and productively in order to make money. Now you bring AI into it, and you can imagine that if drone taxis are going to be the way of life in the next 5 to 10 years, then that logistic function is just kind of integrated into the way they look at the business model. So when you look at this business model of the 4 sectors, the fintech, the logistics, the energy, and AI, all integrated, it becomes a pretty it's a valuable utility, it's a valuable entity for a company with existing business, and then with growth added through innovation, you accelerate growth. And I hope we will do that.
Right. And you guys approach this a little differently, right? You're working with companies to help them develop their own LLMs and native language models. So talk about that and how that provides them with a benefit going forward. How is that different from maybe other approaches that use global information?
So, LLMs is like a highway. You can reach the exit of a certain city, but then once you're inside the city, there's another set of complexities that you have to deal with. And then you've got very similarly a native LLM module that helps to kind of bring in more in-depth insights based on the domain that they are working on. So that's the differentiation that I see, and it's also more, when I look at an AI product, I look at it not only from a point of view of accuracy in terms of how much accuracy does it have in ways in which humans have errors. No matter which sector you go in, because of fatigue, because of work, we have errors. Now, the errors may be different for one sector to another, and AI can only get accepted once you have a better error rate. So coming back to your question, like the LLMs, they need prompts. They need specific training. You need proprietary development. So we also worked with a company which is in creative storytelling, and we extracted the various ideas that exist across maybe 1,000, 2,000 fairy tales that we've all read. It is happening in songwriting. It is happening in creative storytelling. It's happening in coding also, where you basically create extracted content and you kind of connect the string of all these extracted content in a meaningful way to develop your own original theme of whatever you were researching for. So in this case, you can see that we were developing a native model for them based on their fairy tale domain. And naturally, you encounter complexities, like in the Alice in Wonderland story. Suddenly, there is somebody inside the hedge, which is like the hedge that we see in yards. So now, is hedge a place? Is hedge, a part of the situation of, is it a meaningful item within this drama where the hedge is important, or do we ignore hedge in the entire extraction of ideas? Just a very simple example, but it tells you the complexities that we are dealing with when we actually nativize a model to meet the objective of whatever we are trying to solve.
Right. And you offer a number of different solutions for different types of businesses, different problems, correct? From your platform?
Yes. So from our platform, that's a platform which is getting better as we speak. It's a one-shop stop. right from the time that you need to label your data in order to develop your native models. You can source talent from a lot of different countries at different price and different skill sets. So you start from there. You've got data talent coming from all over the world, data science talent, front end. In the end, when you look at any technical application, there's nothing but data input, data processing, and data output. And every business tries to look into how they can be smarter and better in data input, data processing, and data output, because that's where the value lies. But then you have a team of people who've kind of thought through that, worked through it in order to give the best return to the customer who's asking us to develop a custom app.
Right. And why would someone come to you to do that rather than try and do it themselves in-house?
That's a question of, there are companies. That's a great question. And when I look at it, it's an emerging tech that you said at the very beginning of this discussion. And an emerging tech means that there are emerging skill sets also in the marketplace. An emerging skill set, yes, you could have done a great, engineering course somewhere in data science or in AI, in whichever company that you are in. But when you bring it in, those talents are not too old. Those are very young talents. They've been developed in the last 3-4 years. And by the pace at which this technology is growing, those skill sets also become obsolete very quickly unless people can stay abreast with whatever new is developing. So in the end, you look at, what are companies dealing with? Are they dealing with AI, or do they have to use AI to meet any of their business objectives? And the answer comes back mostly it's to meet the business objective. AI is just the means to achieve whatever they are doing. If they are not very proficient in AI, then they should leave it to some people who claim that they are. And naturally, if we deliver justice to that, then we improve in our value proposition to the whole industry. And that's what we are doing.
So what do you offer in this space that's proprietary to help your clients succeed in doing this?
I think the very idea, the definition of idea, what exactly is an idea? And without ideas, you just can't stand on any pedestal of any relevant business concept, whether it's productivity driven or growth driven. So we have our own ways in which we have defined what an idea is, and the way we extract ideas, the way we give it a unique index. And again, when I go back to the thought of what is data input, data processing, and data output, the way an idea is synthesized and the way it is explained. Now, one of the examples that comes up in my mind, and I'm going to say something which is kind of science-based, and I think it's an interesting fact, and hopefully people understand it. So when you look at Edwin Hubble, the telescope was put in the 1920s, and what is Hubble kind of tasked with? He was able to kind of detect. He was amongst the second to have related the blinking of the stars. And when you see that the time taken to blink, the twinkling star, he related it to the concept of distance. And if you look into it, there was another lady who was born in the mid 19th century by the name of Henrietta Leavitt. And Leavitt. And when you look at it, she was the one who said that, the blinking of the stars is related to light years of light. So now Hubble is using that concept 70 years later in order to say that Milky Way is not the only galaxy around it. There's another one which was Endominon or something. I don't remember the name, but it's another one which is thousands of light years away from the Milky Way. So he was the first one to scientifically prove that we are not the only universe over here. Now, 70 years of ideas extraction. And you can imagine how difficult information was in that era, how difficult travel was during that era. And now you kind of come to a point where everything has become faster and better. And now we have this index library. How much more can we accelerate innovation? And how much can we save for the world economy in terms of, having just a great platform in explaining concepts like this, and it percolates down to every sector where ultimately the understanding of the concept is what gives relevance to the profitability or the growth that an industry is going to have. So ultimately, it's a hypothesis, but the idea is gain a lot of money.
Right. And so you're seeing businesses deploy AI across their businesses, correct? It's not just in product management or in sales. How are businesses deploying AI today?
I think a lot of products are coming out. All of them claim to be AI, but again, there is, the business, I think, is facing the challenge of seeing the complexities of so many vendors with small products, unless, of course, they're using the products, and how many vendors can they manage? But overall, it's overall AI is coming in every aspect. Students have started using chat GPTs when universities,
Mhm.
resisted the use of AI. I think a lot of businesses are coming to be aware of the fact that if they don't start creating their own native modules in order to optimize their business parameters, then in that case, they would be existing in a vacuum because other companies would kind of supersede them in the development. And it's all about thoughts, it's about ideas, it's about executing on those ideas. And AI can help within businesses and also outside, because you can't exist in a vacuum. You're
Right.
always a part of a competitive economy, so you have to bring in research from that aspect too, on how do you differentiate yourself.
Right. Right. So, what's the problem with using standard LLMs like OpenAI's ChatGPT?
I think it has a lot to do with prompts. So early, and prompts are nothing, you can say that prompts are a little more better coding techniques, but earlier also we had to code, and prompts are also some mechanism of coding. And the research or the output that we get from most of these LLM modules, even using the same prompt, gives us different outputs.
Okay.
And I think overall, when you come within the firewalls of a company, then you do want to contain this problem of getting different answers using the same prompt from different how many such ideas are you going to get. So that's again a part that we say, let's go over and above. For us, when we extract ideas and we index it and we bring that forward with an explanation template, processing the data in its proper form without too much of use of GPUs, optimizing the CPU GPU infrastructure so that the cost of retrieving information is correct. There's a lot of different levers which are being operated in order to provide the output to the business.
Got it. And so by controlling the data that you're using for your AI, does that help produce better results for companies? Is that a
I
part of
don't
it?
think in our case, Harvey, we don't control. We basically use our engine. And again, there's a cost to operate it. So, at what point will we really scale? But the idea is that whatever is published yesterday, whether within a business or outside, we're able to kind of retrieve index data and store it in a way where the retrieval of where you don't have to move data from one system to another too many times because the cost is going when you move data.
Mhm.
So how do we kind of arrest the control of data? So when I say I'm controlling data, I'm saying that I don't want duplicate ideas.
Right.
My system has to recognize that this idea was very similar to the idea that was published 7 years ago. And if it is so, this idea is important because it's getting published and it's getting cited so many times, but I don't need to bring it back again into my index repository, except probably provide a link. One of the unique features that we have is in order to validate every information, a person can click on the link and it goes to the section of that vast resources from where exactly was that idea extracted, so that if there is a certain misinterpretation by the machine, the user is able to correct it and they can edit it out. No other product that I know has that feature. And it took us our own proprietary codes to develop it, and it took us time before which we could develop it. So it's all about cost optimization. It's about how do you call the data, but we don't control. We want to kind of a machine is trained enough with its definition of what do we call as an idea to extract ideas from yesterday's published information.
Right. So when someone comes to you to engage Nowigence on a project or to help them implement their AI, where do you start with them? How does somebody get involved in this if they're just getting started in getting into AI and their business?
We start from the very basic on what do you want to do. And then it's a graded step approach, because every time we create the output, and especially if it's in an innovative area like in the creative storytelling, it's as much of an eye-opener in terms of what the customer wants to achieve as much as it is for us. So there's a calibration that needs to be done, maybe 17, 18, I don't remember the count of it, but in order to get the desired output, to be having error rates below what human fatigue causes, and also it's virtually impossible for the human to do it without AI. So in this particular case, you meet the two objectives, at which point the product is at least now capable of scale. So there is a lot of different, if especially when you're dealing with a native model for your own business, there is optimization, and there's a sequence of optimization that you need to do. Nothing is ever easy in life. If you go back, Harvey, to our own kindergarten class, how many times we had to say A is for apple, B is for bat, before our dumb brains got to know what ABCD looks like. So, and we had to spend 2-3 years in the kindergarten class just learning the alphabet. So, nothing is ever easy in life. Neither is AI easy.
So what are the risks then that people should look out for when they're implementing and deploying AI?
I think there's a risk of scale. AI is expensive, GPU infrastructure is expensive to utilize, and you can't go on over experimenting with it. If you've got, and that's exactly what happens within corporations when they take in fresh engineers, without any previous experience. You can write a code, but then when you come to scalability, and I think that's what Sam Altman was also, mentioning, that you can have a budget of $5 to $10 million, but if you don't achieve your objective, you're going to sink, not rise. So I think overall, when you look at the risk, there's a risk of skill. There's a risk of, hey, do you know your objectives very clearly? There's a risk of iteration, and you need to be able to afford them to optimize. There is a risk to also stay there's a risk of, I would say, continuity. You just have to, you have to have the determination to meet your objective, and you should choose the right objective for which AI is going to be developed within the corporation.
Yeah,
You can also, you also have, you can look at the driverless cars, and you can see how the project milestone has been moving, because the iteration of whatever we are learning from the cameras that are bringing in the images is much more complex than what had been anticipated at the time we said driverless cars. And driverless cars is not just to kind of drive around on planet Earth. It's also going to help us to navigate elsewhere when we get to space exploration. So there are multiple reasons why we are developing it. And it's a costly technology.
Sure. So it really is that tool that helps businesses move faster and with more depth, given the information they have. I mean, I've worked on innovation teams in the past. We always did research and looked at competitors and all this stuff, but it feels like now there's so much more information, so much more depth, and this is the tool to use to bring that all together, correct?
I look at it and I say, you come to 28, 29, and you go even to the early 30s. Who is going to be in our workforce? Ultimately it has to be, and you can see that happening in Finland, where people beyond the ages of 65, are being asked to be in the workforce, part-time, full-time, whatever, but you need them. The birth rate is declining with all the youngsters all over the world. Every country is having a birth rate problem. So in the end, who's going to be in the work phase? If you think you're going to be analyzing using BI tomorrow without any AI, without the reasoning, what is the difference between BI and AI? Is the reasoning aspect. If you say you're going to be having the reasoning abilities like the way the humans think, without having developed your native model starting from today, you're not going to make it. And then where are the people who are going to help you analyze all that data? I've been involved with mining companies who hired 14 people in their analytics team, but the needle on the yield that they make that didn't move in the last 2 years.
That's crazy. So, what do you see then as the future, short term for Nowigence, and then looking longer term? Where do you see your business going, and where do you see the industry going?
I think again there is a Nowigence that we know today, and there's a Nowigence which is being created tomorrow. As of what we knew today, we were focused mostly on the software side, either custom developing it or developing our own products to kind of bring the reasoning and the ability to kind of extract deep content from whatever we were reading. Now, all that aspect is being moved to the new Nowigence, where we see there would be products coming up in the arbitrage industry to help us save money. There would be optimization programs coming in logistics, which would help us to improve the yield. And logistics is not a very high margin business. There is also in the field of energy, when you look at how do we bring in organic or solid waste, and how do we convert it into CNG? How do we use hydrogen as a source of energy to kind of bring in energy to captive units? Could be residence, could be multi-storied building. So whatever you look at it, there is that aspect that if we are good with what we do, the growth of those industries also help Nowigence to grow, which is going to be predominantly focused with AI within this new group of companies that we are forming. And there are going to be mergers and acquisitions. Just to give you another very specific example, we have greenhouses. Greenhouses, have a micro weather outside and inside, very similar to the concept that you shared a little bit before, where you said inside a company, and also the company has to exist within a sector with other companies in the same area. And you look at agriculture, and you say, hey, micro weather influences the way we dial up or dial down the 29 to 34 parameters that we are controlling in a greenhouse. Now, if AI was to do it, and AI was to give a better return of the produce and take the guesswork out from a farmer running in a 300,000 square feet farm and trying to start the sprinkler system in zone A, shut the sprinkler system in zone D, depending upon the crops that are there. There's a lot of stress there are lots of decisional points that we have to make. We give it to AI, the yield is improving.
Right. Well, that's all my questions I have, but it looks like we have a ton of questions from the audience. So Callie, if you could come back on and moderate those, that would be great.
Absolutely. Okay. So, what talent gaps are you looking to fill to support your next stage of growth?
Well, we look constantly for, Python engineers, front-end engineers, data scientists who basically can take a concept into, have large experience with running different models. And as I told earlier with LLMs, with every model, you get a different answer. So you need to have that critical thinking in order to filter out how that idea best fits into the objective that we are trying to meet for our customer.
And what is the go-to-market strategy, and how are you generating recurring revenue today?
So in our case, we've been the biggest source of revenues today is the custom apps that we develop for customer. Now, the go-to model that is being worked out with the new Nowigence that is being formed with these new promoters is to kind of use AI in the products which are already having large market dominance in the field of fintech, in the field of logistics, in the field of energy. So with use of, with the optimized use of our AI technology in these three sectors, you already have become advanced and specific with a market that is existing, and you provide larger value to the customers. And of course, the rest of the go-to-market strategy also means very strategic players are now coming into our fold. You need GPUs, you need very good programmers. You need the thinkers in the business who can kind of look at any custom app and break it into data inputs, data processing, data output, and bring reasoning into it. So when you kind of look at all these uh, various partnerships that we are going to be announcing very soon, I think that becomes another conduit for growth.
And how large is your addressable market, and what market share are you targeting in the next 3 to 5 years?
When we, again, when we look at our addressable markets, at one time we had evaluated it to be close to about $125 billion. Now, that is without the new promoters coming in. Now, when you look at fintech is a high volume business, and you get, if you have a 4% arbitrage profit, I think it's a big deal. So from a point of view of whether you measure it from 4%, but the market for us with the new promoters has probably expanded also by another $300 to $400 billion. So we are looking at $500 million. We've already have, I would say, what percentage of the addressable market? I think those operating plans we haven't yet formed. But, by the time that we get to the third quarter of this year, we would be looking into 2026, which is going to be a significant year of growth. I think this year, there are numbers which I've heard anywhere between $7 million to maybe $25 million. And I think $25 million is achievable in terms of revenues, could be more, but it all depends upon the speed by which we get the business operation as well as the capital side of the business taken care of. This relationship with the new promoters is relatively young. Just in the last week, I would say the beginning of this week, we were able to sign the deal. Ask me this question again after 2 months, I'll have very specific answers.
Great, thank you. And how are you currently funded, and what will be the primary use of capital related to this round?
I think we've gone through 7 different rounds of funding from the time we started, and every time the pricing was different. We predominantly only depended upon equity for the capital that we raised. We didn't go into convertible notes. We just wanted to keep the balance sheet very simple. Going forward, the promoters are pumping in business. And that is what is going to take us to, we are looking to publicly list on NASDAQ. That's the whole endeavor. So when you ask me as to what's the use of the funds, we are looking for about $1.5 million. And from a use of funds, I think $500,000 is just going from a market, from a product, from an investor relation promotion. Another, $250,000 is just going from a listing expenses. The rest is working capital, a growth of teams. We need some more technical resources. And with the new team joining in, I think the overall ask would increase, but the promoters would bring in some more extra capital because the team's going to become bigger.
And then what's your vision for an eventual liquidity event or exit? And how should we think about the time horizon and return profile?
So I think part of the exit is coming very soon when we say from being a private company, we are going public on Nasdaq. So that gives an exit to a existing shareholder, and there's a long-term value in this business. So given the fact that we are getting into 4 sectors, I think we would be a mid-sized business in 2026. And I can almost say that it'll be more than it'll be more than a 3-digit number in terms of millions of dollars that we would earn in revenue. Again, I'm being a little conservative because we haven't sat down on the operational discussion. Going forward, I think it's a question of, and that's the question Harvey asked me as to what do the Magnificent Seven see in us in terms of uniqueness, our proprietary coding? How do the customers value us? We know that in the area of AI, you can see significant growth if the customers do see the value that we think we bring to the product. So I think that validation is needed. But then if you do get the validation, then the multiplier is pretty significant. And I think it could be also the way it's the next step after search AI search comes to you. The next step is how do you get in depth, and that's the step that we are in. So we could be of value to a lot of companies in this area of research and search.
Great, thank you. And how scalable is your platform across industries?
Scalability depends first in the money that you invest in it. And it does require a lot of capital. And we were cash strapped before the new promoters came into the business. And from that perspective, our scalability was affected. But when we did develop our platform, we look at 3 aspects of it, not only optimal coding, but we look into a human-in-the-loop approach, which is very essential. And then we look at the infrastructure cost on how do we make it optimal in terms of the infrastructure, CPU, GPU combination that we need. I think the new promoters who have developed over 150 products, I think their CTO, who's going to be our CTO also by the name of Kiran Inampudi, he has developed close to about 150 apps of pretty large magnitude. From an infrastructure perspective, he is very skilled in it, and I think he optimizes it to give that cost point attractiveness for our customers, which helps us to grow.
Thank you. And can you walk us through a real-world use case where your platform created measurable ROI for a client?
Well, if you look at the fintech world market, we are amongst the larger providers who can conclude a handshake in terms of the money that's going to be transacted for any cross-border transaction within 5 minutes. This new team is also launching 40 satellites very soon, low orbit satellites to facilitate this entire operation. From an AI perspective, the element that is being brought in is how do you make sure that you transact the foreign exchange that you want to transact for all the payments that have happened in, say, the last 5 minutes in the most in the best form that brings more money to the business. That's just one example. And then, from an indexing of ideas, I think the product is getting boxed up at the moment. And that would be taken to many research institutes to kind of see how the explanation of every idea, and the deduplication of ideas and the citation of ideas, how does it play in order to reduce research cost?
Great. Well, that concludes the questions from the audience and concludes today. I do want to point out to the audience that if you have additional questions or want to be connected, please reach out to me. Everyone has my email address. I'm happy to facilitate an introduction to Anoop. And I want to thank both Anoop and Harvey for just a very wonderful conversation about Nowigence. And we really appreciate you joining us. And Anoop, thank you very much. And I hope everyone has a great day.